All right, AP Psych friends, we are in Unit 7B on thinking. So thinking, to connect this to what you have learned in Unit 7A, thinking is occurring in short-term or working memory. So anytime you are having inner dialogue, talking to a friend, working through a math problem, whenever you are thinking, you are using that short-term or working memory as part of that process. Cognition is just our fancy word for thinking. We talked about that a lot in our Unit 6 on learning. So what happens when we think? We tend to organize things into concepts, and then those concepts will have prototypes associated with them. You spend a large portion of your childhood acquiring these things. So if you've ever been uber annoyed by a toddler asking, what's this, what's that, and why, don't fault them. They're just developing concepts and prototypes. A concept is just a mental grouping, and so anytime you think about or learn something new, you are organizing things into groups based on similarities or differences. And then usually we all have what's known as a prototype. That's your best example of a category or a concept. And so when the most classic example from the world of philosophy is Aristotle's discussion of chairs. And so if you could just visualize a chair for me right now, what does your chair look like? Is it just a wooden, dining room chair? Is it a comfy recliner? It's probably just a pretty standard wooden or plastic chair with a straight back and four legs. Maybe your chair has arms on it, maybe it doesn't. That's your prototype for chair. To you, in Aristotle's words, that is the example of the concept of chair that exhibits the most chairness. It's the thing that you think has qualities most indicative of being a chair. Beanbags, director's chairs, probably not your prototype, but still would fall into the concept of chair. All right, and so those are just some words associated with our thought process. When it comes to thinking and solving problems, we've got some new vocabulary words to work with. An algorithm, math and computer fans know, is a step-by-step procedure that is going to guarantee a solution. Okay, algorithms are laborious and exasperating was the quote that Myers used in your textbook. You could, in some cases, come up with hundreds of thousands of permutations before arriving at the correct solution to the problem. But the key here is that you are guaranteed to, at some point, uncover the correct solution. Heuristics is just simple strategies, or I like to think of them as mental shortcuts. They're fast and efficient, but know that they are more error prone than an algorithm. And so think about, you always go in your house through the garage by using your garage door opener, and the battery dies in your garage door opener. So you're looking at your key ring and you're trying to remember what key opens up the side garage door. An algorithm would involve you starting with one key and keeping track of where you started and trying every single key. Will you eventually come across the garage door key? Of course. Or you could look at them and eliminate, right? Well, I know that this is my, car key, and that this key is the key for, my workplace. And then through trial and error, maybe come to some sort of mental shortcut at arriving at finding the right key. So, in solving problems and thinking, obviously as humans, we use a combination of both of algorithms and heuristics. Related to that is the concept of insight. That's a sudden and often novel realization. I like to think of those as your aha moments, like you're staring at a problem and instantly the solution comes to mind. Wolfgang Kohler, who is actually well known for his work with Gestalt psychology, and this would make sense. Remember that Gestalt psychologists view looking at the whole being more significant or more important than the sum of its parts. And so he did some research with Sultan, a chimpanzee, and presented him with a number of problems that involved, using sticks as tools and reaching fruit that was out of reach in Sultan's cage. And Kohler actually does some fascinating observations of chimpanzees having an aha moment or using insight as a way to problem solve. And so it's kind of cool to know that that's not unique to humans. Creativity is often discussed when we talk about thinking. The things that were listed in the reading are really just characteristics that foster creativity. Okay, so creativity is your ability to produce novel and valuable ideas. It's usually related to the things listed on the screen. The more knowledgeable a person is in a field, the more they can tend to think outside that box and come up with creative solutions to problems. So expertise plays a role. Having an imaginative personality tends to lend itself more to creativity. Having a venturesome personality, being willing to take risks, not being afraid of failure, tends to be a characteristic of creative thinkers. Intrinsic motivation, right? Like wanting to come up with a new solution to a problem simply because the individual desires to do it for knowledge's sake and not necessarily for any sort of extrinsic or outside reward tends to be important as well. And having an environment that fosters creativity is very important as well. And so if you've ever done any research into the history of big companies like Google always comes to mind, that having office spaces on the Google campus that are lending itself to creative thinkers is how we have a lot of really cool products and ideas by our friends at Google, is that it's a company that would encourage time to think outside the box and not having that mentality of this is the way we've always done it, which decreases creativity. All right, obstacles to problem solving. Problem solving is not always easy thinking. And so some things that sometimes get in the way of us generating solutions to our issues. Confirmation bias is the tendency for individuals to search out information that coincides with their current thought, right, or matches their current belief, and to kind of ignore anything that contradicts this. This is why replication in scientific experiments and being willing to prove hypothesis incorrect as well as correct is so important for, the ethical requirements to research, is to not fall victim to this confirmation bias. Fixation is just our inability to see something from a different or a new perspective. Some things related to being fixated is a mental set. We tend to approach problems in one particular way. So if there was a solution to a problem that worked in the past and you're presented with a similar problem, it's only natural for you to try and rely on that mental set that you had that had worked for you in the past. But sometimes that gets in the way, and that if it doesn't work in the new situation, we sometimes, keep trying. Like I always think about, like a computer that's not cooperating with you, and laughing at myself as I, realize that, clicking the mouse repeatedly 1,000 times is probably not going to solve my problem. And so we tend to sometimes only approach things in ways that we are used to approaching them. Functional fixedness is, again, thinking things only in terms of their usual purpose, which can impede on problem solving. You're probably all too young to remember MacGyver, right? The TV show where we have all these adventures, and the guy is solving problems by using things in ways that we would have never thought of using. Like diffusing a bomb with dental floss bubble gum and a newspaper or something amazing like that. And so sometimes we have to remember that things can be used for purposes that perhaps were not their originally intended purpose, and that can lead to better problem solving. Concerning making decisions and forming judgments, those heuristics, they have a lot of benefits, but also, can be misused. And so just remember that, mental shortcuts can sometimes be misused, but they are still somewhat helpful. Some things to keep in mind, and these are kind of more of the misuse, but a representativeness heuristic, that tends to be our tendency to judge things based on how they match our prototype. And so that sometimes means we ignore relevant info because it doesn't seem to matter at the time, because we're only thinking about things in terms of how we're used to thinking about them. And availability heuristic just means that any instance that readily comes back to your memory tend to be the ones that we assume are more common. So I always laugh as a teacher concerning projects in class where you ask a group of students to rank their contributions to the group assignment or the group presentation, and I will tell you that everybody thinks that they are the one that did more work than anybody else in the group. And I always chuckle as I think availability heuristic. Of course you think that you did more work versus everyone else because you were there with you while you were doing your portion of the work. That's what comes readily to mind when you think about the group project, is the stuff you did. And so that always kind of makes me laugh to listen to students sometimes argue amongst themselves with that. Overconfidence is just, our tendency to think we're right more often than we really are, which can sometimes impede on problem solving and affect how we make decisions. Belief perseverance just means that sometimes individuals have issues with believing something or thinking something is a specific way even after they are presented with evidence that discredits that, right? Well, we'll dismiss that evidence. I still think I'm right, because fill in the blank. Perils and powers of intuition. There's a really wicked cool chart on page 310 of your textbook that will talk about, the pros and cons of intuition. Intuition's just that effortless, automatic thought, right? Going on your gut feeling versus going on conscious reasoning, which can serve us well in some cases but fail us in others. So take a look at some of those examples if you have a chance. And then the effects of framing is something that fascinates me, I guess, as a former debate coach and former pre-law student, that the way in which an issue is posed can affect a person's judgment of it. I always think about watching the weather and how sensationalized local news even makes weather reports, and that if the local weather reporter is telling me that there is a 30% chance of rain tomorrow, that I will grab that umbrella on my way out the door, but not grab the umbrella if they tell me that it's 70% of the day will be partly sunny. What happened to the other 30%? It's the same thing, yet how it is posed seems to affect my outerwear decisions, and I always smile as I think about framing effects. And so those are fascinating to look at examples of. And so tomorrow should be a fun day in class. Come with any questions that you may have, and I'll have some different story problems and different examples so that you can see some of problem solving in action and can see some of these hindrances to our problem solving process. So as always, thanks for listening.